Yeah, yeah. So we will after all these years that you've collected calls, collected memories. This is what was really interesting is you talked about the Pete Alonso call that you just had. And here's the thing in the wild card series. And this is what's cool is when you're talking about certain calls and there was one that just happened and it sounds like this is a more, important one that you've had, a more recognizable one. You listen to it on the flight and it's just a more recent
Mhm.
one. So when you've had so many over the years and you're comparing this one to a more memorable one, sounds like you were kind of embarrassed almost to like listen to it on the plane. Where like
It wasn't
why
my
does
idea.
yeah, I know. When you have this one that was more recent compared to all the collective ones that you've had, where does this one rank and why is it kind of a more memorable one compared to others?
I think I still need a little separation in terms of months or even years from it to put it
Mm,
in a better perspective because it wasn't just that one call. And it's not so much the call as it is the moment.
okay.
A lot of us in this business can work our entire careers and never have moments like the Mets
Mm.
presented us with during the postseason because there was Francisco Lindor's dramatic home run in the top of the ninth inning in Atlanta
That
on the
still I
day
can't. I
after,
can't.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So that gave the Mets the playoff spot. That was huge. People were saying biggest home run in Mets history. And then 3 days later, or 4 days later, Pete hits that home run, which, I mean, they were dead in the water for the first 8 innings. It's an elimination game. It's the final game of a best of three series. 16 Mets had been retired in a row going to the ninth inning. They're down 2-0. There wasn't much reason to believe. Devin Williams, who had been pretty well lights out most of the time since he came back from his injury, was the reliever for the Brewers, but the Mets get a couple of players on, and then here comes Alonso. And what I liked about the call wasn't only the act of describing the ball hitting the bat and going over the fence and everything else, but we were able to present that at bat and frame it because around the significance potentially of what it represented because it may well have been his last at bat as a
Yeah.
Met, but I remember saying he could still make it his most memorable, and wouldn't you know it, he does just that. When I listened back to the call, I thought, boy, I've never talked so much, even though it's radio. I've never talked so much, but it was
Mm,
a unique moment because of the
yeah.
significance and the players come pouring out of the dugout. We'd never seen that. So, I'm comfortable with it. But what I wasn't comfortable with was when we got onto the plane to go to Philadelphia after the game. Remember, they'd been celebrating pretty hard in the clubhouse.
Right.
So everybody was feeling pretty good.
Yeah.
And somebody in the Mets front office decided that they wanted to play the call of the home run over the PA on the airplane. And that was a moment that we don't get. We know our place on the charters. The players have their space, we have ours, and we don't go back and forth. But that was a moment that, um, as I say, I think I still need a little separation from to really absorb the significance because I can see it when somebody replays that clip to me or think about it. And although I still get goosebumps, I think there'll be even bigger goosebumps when we're a few years out and I'm
Right.
retired and I think back and go, wow, that happened,
Mhm.
you know?
And it'll still probably be more toward the moment, I would assume.
Well, yeah, because
Mhm.
again, you could work a lot of years and never get the opportunity
Mm,
to call a moment like that. And I frankly loved the moment that Francisco Lindor gave us in the fourth game
yeah.
against the Phillies because, they've been leaving guys on with regularity until he hits that grand slam. And it just
Yeah.
was a feeling at Citi Field that I don't know that I'd ever experienced since it opened in 2009.
And I think about that too. It's like when the call's one
Mhm.
part, which is obviously important, but I like the discussion. Like you're all sitting at a table and you're like
Mhm.
telling everybody the story that led up to all of it, and that's just more of makes it more beautiful and the whole conversation leading up to the call. That's what's
Yeah,
great.
that's what I'm frankly most proud of because that's our job.
Yeah.
Anybody, and I don't mean to sound what the right word for it would be. I don't mean to make it sound as though it's maybe easier than it actually is. But I think any of us in this business who call baseball for a living, any of us can announce a ball being hit over the fence.
Mhm.
Some do it differently than others. Some you might opine do it better than others. But it's not about the act of here's the pitch, crack of the bat, home run. It's
Mhm.
how do you frame the moment? How do
Mm.
you build the drama? That's what I love about radio. You don't need to do that on television. On radio, you need to build the drama. And my voice and inflection have to reflect that, you
Mm.
know? So, however I inflect, however I intone, it's got to sound different at a pivotal moment in the game as opposed to an at bat in the first or second inning. That's one of the biggest challenges of radio. And that's what allows us to deliver moments like that in a way that justifies the significance of what happens on the field.
That's so interesting. You have to describe it without really using words.
Well, I think the words are important. I
Yeah,
think
but I mean,
that
like,
when I talk about the
words are
inflection,
important, but like, there's another element to it as well.
yeah, there's it's a desperation. It's uh, an immediate sort of almost subliminal message
Yeah.
that you send that there's an urgency here.
Mhm.
And even though it might not have manifested on the result of the first or second or third pitch, I've got to be able to impart that through the way I'm delivering the information. I
Mhm.
have to make sure that if this is a moment that calls for nervousness, that I'm creating a nervous feel
Right.
to those who are actually listening, if that makes any sense.
It does.
Um,
It does.
it's why I just love radio. You don't have to do that on television. In
Mhm.
fact, you're encouraged to say less on
Yeah.
television. Big moment, big pitch. I don't need to be yammering about that if I'm doing TV. Just let the viewer see what's going on.
Mhm.
On radio, though, it's a little different.
Mhm. And, you know, around that call, around the moment, it was kind of awesome because it's one of the, especially on radio when it comes on to social media, TVs, those moments are easy to like show when it comes to the clips and everything, but that was one of those radio moments that people gave a lot of feedback. Was there a particular person that you were really excited to hear from that heard that moment and you're like, "Oh, I heard from X, Y, and Z and they loved that moment?"
That's a great question. I heard from so many, and I don't necessarily want to single one out from another as far as other broadcasters are concerned, because we're all part of the same fraternity, same industry. So, you know, the words of one of my
Mm.
peers meant just as much as another's. I mean, Keith Hernandez texted me
Mm.
after the Lindor home run in New York against Philadelphia, the grand slam. And one of the things I said, which actually is, I was really proud of it, was as I mentioned earlier, the Mets had been leaving men on base inning after inning, and they were down 1-0, and they had all these opportunities. And it was so frustrating until Lindor hits the grand slam. And as he's heading towards the plate, I said, they were famished for the big hit all night, and
Mm.
Francisco Lindor just provided a feast. Um,
Oh,
I
that's
kind of
cool.
like that myself,
Yeah.
because again, it's organic. It just comes to you in the moment. And Keith texted me and said something really complimentary about it. And
Mm.
obviously he and I are friends. We work together and all that. But given the stature that he enjoyed as a player and a baseball person, and as highly respected as he is for his baseball intellect and acumen, apart from just being a terrific player, that meant a little more to me. It
Right.
really did. So thanks, Keith.
We love you, Keith. Thank you.